I should probably make this public now. So should my ashes be run through my Husaberg at like full to half noise at the location that I tell somebody to ride that bike to? We're thinking about our trusts and our wheels now.
Yeah. Well, what I told you, I guess, is it's not going to hurt the bike, and you're going to get your last fling right through the combustion cycle. So
it's
an interesting idea.
If that seats the piston rings just that little bit better, like imagine that thing will have more power, which is hard to believe, but that thing can have more power because I'm in it. To amazing episode number, you'd think I would have figured this out by now. 200, I'm guessing 30, but it could be 29, but it might be 30. I'm thinking it's 30 of Tech Talk Taco Tuesday. This is the show where we talk about motorcycles and motorcycle related products. Luckily, we only have one sponsor that I do need to remember to remind you about, and that's Yamaha. Yamaha makes awesome motorcycles. We already knew that. So we don't have to talk about them too much, but if you do decide you want to ask us a question, because that's what this show is about, you can ask us a question about anything motorcycle or motorcycle product related, maybe other stuff too, because I tend to pretend like I'm an expert at different things. And in doing that, if I say that the answer is Yamaha, then you should think that I'm just saying that because it's my advertising, but I really do mean it sometimes. So there we go. The best ad read you've ever heard all night. Again, live from Pahrump, Valley of the Dirt People. We have a special guest tonight. I didn't know I was going to do this show until about, I don't know. We're going to find out here real soon. Welcome to the show, Ray Conway, who is now blurred out and crooked and hidden someplace different. I'll bring you into the show somehow or another. See, this is the technical part that if I had like somebody that was a real producer that knew how to make this work, it would be, I know what happened. This is the wrong screen. Watch this. I should have gone to this screen here, and then I should have clicked this button here, and it'd be perfect. And now I'll make the Yamaha logo go away. So Ray, welcome to the show.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh boy, we're loud. Let me see if I can adjust you.
No, I'll tone down.
If anybody's, I don't think it's you. I think there's more buttons here. There's a change now when I push the different buttons. Boy, I'm gonna try to figure this thing out while I'm working here. Let's go with this one here, and hopefully that window opens up, and then I'm in good shape here. But we'll see. The chat will generally tell me whether I've completely screwed up or not, but we'll see. The good thing is my wife texted me and said she's on the East Coast. She texted me and told me she went to bed. So that means we don't have to worry about the random call in from Heather, which we get every once in a while. So Ray Conway, you're wearing probably two awesome pieces of clothing we can see there. You're wearing a Climb hat. Climb, a longtime sponsor of this show, supporter of Dirt Bike Test. So thank you very much for that. And the Jimmy Lewis Off-Road Riding School t-shirt.
It's a classic souvenir from former classes.
Awesome. So I'm going to hope that it's on my side that the speaker's really loud and it's going out good on the internets. I think because I've got the soundboard adjusted here. This is what you have to do. So that's why I'm going to do what I do is just have a little bit of tequila tonight. For those that are interested on Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, I am drinking Don Cayo. I'm going to start with the Extra Anejo. So the good thing is since Ray's not here, that means that there's more in the studio for me. So we'll get that going.
Have Dr. Pepper.
Oh boy. Take it easy on that stuff. I heard it hit you pretty hard.
Got to limit myself.
So I wanted to I have a question this week too that of course I didn't do a whole lot of show prep for this, but I had a question and I have to remember it because it's the Fasst Company Flex Handlebars question of the week. And this is a new thing, even though I like I just to tell you, we don't have any sponsors. But Fasst Company is going to, for the best question we get each week, they're going to give you a really good deal on a Fasst Company product. So whether that's the Flex Handlebars, which is what you really want, or maybe they're the Flex Handlebars for your mountain bike, or maybe it's just that little rim lock spacer, which is, it's stuff you see on factory bikes. Maybe it's a spoke torque wrench, any of those kind of things that you might need from Fasst Company. If you send us a good question, I am going to notify Cole down there, and he's going to take care of you. So we like good questions if you are into needing to know some stuff, and I will fetch that question. But Ray, the reason I thought I'd bring you on is we were talking about as we get older in our advanced age, we were talking about trusts and different things like that, and we started having the discussion about where we might want to go. And I was thinking that maybe if I were cremated, people would say they'd want to be put in certain places. But could you take my Husaberg 570 and hold it wide open and sprinkle the dust on top of the air filter? Because not only would I be destroying a Husaberg that's giving me so much pleasure, and also passing through that, who knows where I'd go afterwards.
No, it's funny this came up literally a few minutes ago, because one of the first things I learned in my dealership days, and you haven't given these people any introduction of what the heck I am, but
we don't know what you are anymore. You're retired.
Yeah.
Hey, as the stories come out, we'll fix this. Go ahead.
Way back in the early days, I was at a Kawasaki. I was at Steve Hurd's Kawasaki shop. So two-stroke street bikes were still being sold, and they didn't last. You had to re-ring those things like every 10 or 15,000 miles. So you charge a customer back in those days a few $100s, rebuild his top end, and then he'd pick up his bike and it smoked like the dickens because it took a couple tanks of gas to break in the rings. So to your cremation question, what I was taught by Stan Udell, one of the top service managers today, after we do a rebuild, we take the air filter out, hold the bike half throttle, and pour Bonami in the airbox. It would scuff in the rings, and then they wouldn't smoke. So actually, it'd probably make
you pour. Wait a minute.
Better if you went through it.
Okay. You'd pour what in this?
Bonami. It's an old cleaning product, like Comet. It's called Bonami.
Bonami. Okay.
It's a scouring solution. It powder, and we would just pour it in the airbox, and then all of a sudden the thing would quit blue smoking. We put the air filter in, give it to the customer. I thought it was the craziest thing I ever saw. I bet we did it for 2 or 3 years before the two strokes faded away. So,
kids,
some old trick from the old days.
So that is because the rings had a hard time seating.
Right. You had old steel liners and really hard. They made the rings really hard because they wanted them to last a long time, but for 500 miles, they would smoke worse than when we rebuilt it before it would break in and be normal for the next 8 or 9,000 miles.
Well, I mean, and nowadays, I mean, the production tolerances have gotten so much tighter, and the different things. I watched a real interesting video done. It was just about piston rings and all the different shapes of piston rings and how they were using them for different types of sealing and different applications. And I remember all pistons used to have, in my time, they all had 2 rings and an oil scraper ring on a 4-stroke, or 2 strokes always had 2 rings. And then we started going to single ring and, different configurations. And it's interesting. I mean, stuff has just gotten so good because it's so easy to share information these days.
Yeah. I mean, and it's somewhere rattling around in my old office at Honda, there's a set of the oval piston rings for an NR 750. So those are the interesting items to have seen in your day.
Yeah. I mean, how hard would that have been to produce oval piston rings?
I mean, honestly, it's something, they invented the oval piston and the rings. They put it in production. They sold a few hundred of them special order, and then Honda's never touched it since. On one hand, it's probably not needed, but it just the tour de force of engineering is pretty amazing. Basically they're getting around a road race rule where you can only have 4 cylinders. Honda's famous for wanting to have multiple cylinders, so an oval piston turns a 4-cylinder into an 8-cylinder, and it was pretty cool. But the
And
the
did each one of
production
those
effort
pistons?
versus the output was sort of hard. It was to get around rules, basically.
So that piston, did each piston have two rods attached to it?
Yes, exactly. And there was, and
Because
on the top of the piston dome, or the top of the piston, there was even a little, I'm going to say, a little bridge work. So when the thing was completely at compression, as far as the cylinder head was concerned, it was 2 cylinders. You see what I'm saying? When it was all the way
right.
up, there was 2 cylinder zones, and then it would go down, and then oval piston come back up. But yeah, so it was 4 pistons, 8 rods, 8 spark plugs, 16 valves. Right? It was an 8-cylinder bike with just 4 holes in it.
With just four holes. That's crazy. I mean, you think about I start thinking about all the different things about, like, okay, since that piston, like the rings, the pressure on the ring would be kind of interesting when we go back to the rings, because it's not a circle at that point. It's like I said, it's an oval, and like I wonder where the ring gap. The rings couldn't go freely. The rings were stuck in their position. They're not able to move, or
Yeah,
so
exactly. Like a round ring could sort of hand float around the piston. These were fixed. They couldn't move. They were in their single spot.
yeah, it sounds like something not ideal for production applications.
Yeah. Well, I always thought, so right now you have essentially in motocross or dirt bikes, pretty much you have a single cylinder rule. So what if you made I'm going to say an oval 250, which would make it a 500. you know,
Right.
you suddenly could have 2-cylinder dirt bikes, but the engine would look more or less like a single. It would be amazing, which leads me into somebody who's finally going to kick the can a little bit with the Ducati and their 450 Desmo motor. Something new, finally. You know.
I, I'm waiting to see it. I mean, it's funny because when I started showing videos of all that stuff and things, I'm like going, is it a Desmo? I mean, because you look at the motor and it goes, man, that looks awful familiar. Honda is, and so for those that don't know, Ray worked at Honda for the entirety of
28
your
years.
career, 28 years. Started as
28 years.
a
Learn-
go through the history.
I well, I did 10 years of dealership from 76 to
Okay,
86.
starting with.
Well, my very first dealership was a place called Southland Honda Suzuki. They sold Hondas and Suzukis, which was rare back in the 70s because rarely did you have a Japanese and a Japanese. You had Japanese and a CCs, Japanese and Maicos, but twin Japanese. Then I went to the Kawasaki shop, which was Kawasaki's and Husqvarna's, and then I became a Husqvarna specialist. I would always jump between like a Kawasaki or a Honda shop that sold Husqvarna's. And then in 86, I got hired at American Honda as a phone answering customer relations person. And then I did field service. And then I did uh, basically,
But
they
so
call
like
them
so
model
like
engineers. But I
Yeah, so
was,
like every kid, but every kid today, just like every kid today, when you started that dealership, you started as the manager of the dealership, or were
oh
you just
God,
the
no.
boss of all the people?
Yeah. So Southland Honda was, was the bathroom cleaner, the soda pop machine restocker, the broom boy, the put the motorcycles together guy, every little critty job. Then on Saturdays, oh my God, on Saturdays, I got to work in the parts department, like helping people and selling
Okay,
parts. My favorite day.
good. I'm just checking because I mean the kids today, not that they're bad or anything like that. They could come in maybe a little above broom pushing, but there's nothing wrong with the little broom pushing to get your career started.
That's exactly really. So let's go back just slightly farther. So, and then for you Southern California people, you've seen the name Norm Reeves on like auto dealerships. I knew Norm Reeves. He was a real human being. and he had motorcycle shops in the 70s. And sadly, he loved Baja, and he was down there trail riding and just had a heart attack and died in 1975, I think. But
Wow.
his dealership, which was closest to my house, was Honda, Kawasaki, Bultaco, Sachs. But anyways, had my CR 125 Elsinore. I needed some parts. I schwinned my ass down there, and then it's it's probably a Saturday, super busy day, and the parts guys, I needed an N59G, some piston rings, a head gasket. Back in those days, $12, right? And they go, "Hey kid, you can have all this stuff for free if you literally run across the street, Paramount Boulevard or Lakewood Boulevard, to the Carl's Jr. and get us all like burgers and fries. Like, here's $20, go feed us, right?" So I literally ran across the street, come back with a bunch of sodas, come back with a bunch of burgers and fries, free parts. Woohoo! I'll show up every Saturday. Then unofficially, they put me to work. I'd show up in the summertime and I'd break down the cardboard crates and I'd saw up the wooden crates from the bull tacos and I'd pick up the bolts and swap the oil. And I was working for parts at 14 years old. That was my first like motorcycle job. Totally lot boy cleanup stuff.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to joke and throw that aside. So slowly through the years, you worked your way up, parts guy, and
yeah, exactly. So lot boy, parts guy, parts manager, service writer, service manager at a lot of stores, and doing all of that. And then, amazingly enough, I was back in the Norm Reed's empire at the car dealership in 1986, working for Norm's wife. She still had the shop. And then in that little gap between when I left motorcycles and was at the car dealership, my old Honda service rep, he got promoted in-house and then got a hold of me and said, "I need bodies to run the Honda's customer relations thing." And I got hired in 86 and walked out the door in 2015, 28 years later.
So, and I kept hearing you say husky.
Yeah.
So you seem to be attracted to something there.
Well, it was an interesting phenomena for me is when I'm working at Southland Honda and some things transpired and I wound up at the Kawasaki Husqvarna shop. And I was there for 4.5 years. And the parts manager, old guy, wonderful human being, Jim Vinkymolder, he didn't like dealing with the Husky system or the Husky people. He was a Kawasaki guy, So they had a job, needed parts kid. I go in there and I get hired, and it's like, if you'll deal with these motorcycles, and at that point I didn't know anything about them in the sense that I didn't. So I said, yeah, sure, whatever. And so then I bought one, a 1979 CR250. So I just immersed myself in ownership, and then the customers guy come in and say, "I need a Husky part," and they just point at me, and I just deal with the guy, and then I got stuck's not the word, but I just became a specialist. So then the local Honda shop had the same thing. They had a nobody there to take care of their Husky customers, although they were a pretty good sales point. So then I went to work for them as a service manager, but I was also the go-to Husky guy for all those years, and did some Baja racing with Team Husqvarna as a 250 guy.
This is okay. So this is what I was leading into. So there was a reason for the Husky because you were desert racing.
Yeah. So, well, actually, I started motocrossing Husqvarnas in 79 and 80 when they were already falling out of favor, and but I like for my talent level, handling was more important than power, so it could keep me out of trouble. I mean, I'm just kind of a putt novice motocrosser, and I just got tired of sitting around all day for 20 minutes of riding and got into desert racing, where at least you got up in the morning and rode for 3 or 4 hours and did 100 miles, and that really fed into the Husqvarna side of the business at that time, and it just. One of my tricks I just remember as the parts manager at Whittier Kawasaki Husqvarna is just coming right first of the year. I'd put like skid plates and Malcolm Smith gas tanks on the wall and a few things because March was the viewfinders race at Riverside, and always at the last minute people would show up and go, oh, I want to go to the Grand Prix and I need a big tank and I need a skid plate, and I'd have them in stock and sell those things out every year like clockwork, because I had them, because I knew what they needed and I had them in stock. Just knowing your
Nice.
customer kind of trick.
I mean, that's what a lot of it's funny how it's kind of transitioned to the big transition is like, knowing your customer no matter where you're at, whether you're doing something on social media, whether you're, a guy at a dealership. And now the trick is like, how do you, I always struggle with this because like, how do you be a guy at a dealership and, build a real loyal following customer base and have them not go to like some of the online retailers and stuff like that. And, how important is the local shop versus, it's because I hardly ever go into a motorcycle dealership anymore.
Yeah, I'm with, I got a garage full of assorted brands now. Me and you joke about Husabergs, and I got some Yamaha T7s. I love those motorcycles like you do, and I got a KTM. And my
By the
wife's
way,
got a Husqvarna.
Hold on. Yamaha sponsor this show. Ray Conway, longtime Honda guy. Not to say that the Honda adventure bike offerings aren't very nice machines too. You can go check out the tests we've done on dirt bike tests, but a T7 convert.
Oh yeah.
Uh-oh,
I had KTM 990s, me and my wife, because we wanted sort of the smallest giant dirt bike you could get, and then Yamaha comes out with an even smaller giant dirt bike. So, and a little bit simpler to own, although, if you're really into it, you can't beat a KTM 950, 990. But if you're not totally a dirt guy, a little simplicity, lightweight, less powerful engine is easy to ride at, certain stages of your life. But where I'm going with this is I got Japanese bikes, European bikes, old bikes, new bikes, 250 Elsinore, brand new Beta cross trainer, got all this stuff. And I'm with you. I mostly just go online, have the parts sent to me. But there's a few outstanding examples, like unsolicited plugs near you. You got Sportsman Cycle. If you're a Beta guy in Vegas,
yeah.
I mean, you can't beat that shop. And out here, I'm not, in SoCal, in your old stomping grounds, you got Three Brothers. They're just totally into their product and can help you in so many ways. But then you get into the multi-line. They sell everything side by side, touring bike, dirt bike. That gets hard for those people to be your expert, depending on what part of the cycling you're into. That's a tough road to hoe.
It's funny because at that point, because I remember when I was a kid, I grew up in Ventura area, and we had a few different dealerships in Oxnard, and I used to race for had a sponsorship. I got a discount on a bike and some parts discount. Like we talk about at Kawasaki Central, and then there was the Honda shop, and then the I can't remember the Honda shop, but like I ended up getting to know the. Well, that was up the hill. Okay. That was up in Thousand Oaks. This was down in Oxnard. But there's the different, you were probably servicing those dealers.
Yeah, I was a dealer rep. I was a service rep for that area from 90 to 98. So
yeah, no, that would have been way, because I'm trying to think of, well, now we go back to where did I get the XR80 from? Like where I think my dad got the XR80 from. I want to say it was Colby Honda, which you're familiar with.
Yeah.
In the valley.
So the Woodland Hill store was Honda dealer number 15.
Yeah. So there's like all these things, but I got to know the parts people, because that's, I have to go in. I bought the motorcycle, but then the salespeople kind of seem to fluctuate, but the parts people are the one you made your kind of connection with. And maybe if they knew the salespeople, they could talk to the salespeople to help, get you a deal. And, because I know Trevor wanted to race Kawasaki's in the Hare and Hounds, and that dream is withered a little bit. But I set him up with the guys at the what's the big multi-line dealer in California now?
Chaparral.
It's no Del Amo Motorsports.
Oh, Del Amo, yeah. because they just
Yeah.
bought, well, not like 2 years ago, they bought the last Norm Reed's store, as a matter of fact, which was Mid Cities in my brain, but Norm
Yeah.
Reed's in Mid Cities, which that was Doug, Marion, Norm's daughter. So to me, it was still in the family. And then Delamo bought them like 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of different. You start talking about the history, and we talked about it, but it was like 81. So like in 90 at that point, 89, 90. Yeah,
It was,
I was well actually 89. I was riding for Al Baker, so I was riding XR 250. At that time, I was kind of still doing Yamahas, but that was through Granada Yamaha.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you think about all these local shops in Southern California, is that whether you're going to Indian Dunes and you were riding for the Suzuki dealership that seemed like they always had a pretty strong presence out there. Can't remember, but Granada Yamaha had,
Oh, yeah.
motocross guys, and they had their the owner was out riding the district enduros and things. So it was
And
back then. I think if you were in the industry, you were kind of an enthusiast.
yeah, yeah. Boy, if you want to pull a crazy Ivan, Suzuki. So let's back up one. When I'm at Southland Honda Suzuki, I'm there in 1975. So you had TMs. So we're talking motocross dirt bikes. You had TMs, and
Right.
then you had the half RM 125. And basically, we still had customers tumbling in the door buying 125 Elsinores that were already getting a little long in the tooth. Okay. And then in
Yeah.
1976, you get RM 100 through RM 370, and you couldn't give a Honda away. And we had Suzuki's. I mean, it was this unbelievable instantaneous change in the business, and all the
Because it
years of
was
all
the
their
were
success, and
were
now
those bikes that
Suzuki's.
that much better?
Oh,
Were,
an RM to, I mean, in
whatever.
1976, an RM anything was basically the best bike. Maybe an open Mako, which was in another world of dirt bike ownership, but
Yeah.
they just came from sleepy TMs to full blown RMs, plus Gostin and Roger and Garrett, and just they won all the world championships. They had the bikes everybody's standing in line for. Rex Stain was the king of saddleback. It was insane. And then to me, there was this long, long, long ride of Suzuki being on top of the game, right in the mix forever. And then now we're at where we're at now, where they're just tumbling along best they can on some pretty old motocross stuff. You know?
Maybe they're taking lessons from back in the 70s, or maybe you sit on it for a little while.
Yeah,
I
I
I
mean,
don't I don't I wonder if I see them, ever really coming back. I mean, like, this is where it's crazy when even when we're talking about the history, which is amazing. And this is, and like when you're talking 76 and stuff like that, that's before my time. That's when I went into Wheelsmith. No, not Wheelsmith. Cyclops Cycles in Camarillo. And when I was standing up, I'm staring straight into the fins. I'm standing as tall as I can. I'm staring straight into the fins of a Mako 490. And those are memories that I can never. I still have not ridden one, by the way. It's
really?
somebody at some point I'm going to get to ride a Mako 490, and whether it's the Twin Shocker or the Sand Spider or whatever,
And Spider.
I do need I do need to ride one of those. Yeah, I heard they go downhill when they go to Sand Spider.
No, 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 no. Can I tell
They
you a
don't.
Sand Spider
This
story?
the single shock. Oh, okay, yeah, because I can get to my point later. I'll just have another. By the way, tonight's second tequila is Don Cayo. This is let's see. Let me see. And you wonder how long the show was going to go for. So this is the Jimmy Cam here. So Don Cayo Silver. So very nice. These, you can't get these in the States. I did have to slow down at the border a little bit to get them through. So Ray, okay, Sand Spider story.
Sand Spider story. So between Kawasaki Husqvarna dealership and Honda Husqvarna dealership, I wound up at Bill Saltzman's Motorcycles that sold all the European stuff. So famous desert racer. Some people love them, some people hate them, but a lot of number one plates. Mako, KTM, Husqvarna, what was left Can-Am, and he was a huge Hodaka dealer at one time, but they were gone. So I'm there in late 82. Single shock / Sand Spiders were 83 models. There's a couple stories intertwined in here. So the Maicos guys, Otto Maish, he shows up with with a prototype Sand Spider and gives it to Bill Saltzman, and they go ride it around, and he races it a little bit, and it's really and truly a terrific motorcycle. And the way they did it was they took the regular motocross bike and they put wide ratio gears in it, and then the way IMS CH Wheat got in the gas tank business is he made the large gas tank for Maicos that make the Sand Spider. And then the other thing why Sand Spiders are better than everything else is they didn't get Corton Crosser shocks, they got Olin shocks. So as a dealer at the dealership, what you got when you ordered a Sand Spider, you got a Maicos 490, and inside the box was a bike with no gas tank, a bike with no silencer, a bike with no rear shock, and and then that's all you got. Like a day or two later, the UPS truck showed up with a box. In the box was the big gas tank, the Olin shock, a Skyway spark arrestor muffler, and a Utah Sports skid plate and kickstand. And you put the Sand Spider together, and then you sold it. And that particular, so later that, I'm jumping around, but later that year, I left Bill, went to work at the Honda Husqvarna dealer, and this is the interesting thing. Motorcyclist magazine that year did a desert bike shootout. So they did the XR 500, the 500 XC Husqvarna, and the 490 Sand Spider were like the desert bikes. And when they were all done with their tests, and they picked the best bike you should buy for desert racing, it was a Sand Spider. So more than the Honda, more than the Husqvarna, little old Maicos. And the parts manager at the store, Mike Bouvet, he's like, no shit. So he runs down to San Pedro Cycles, which is just a Maicos dealer, buys a Sand Spider. And I never rode the bike when I was at Bill's. Put them together, met the development. But we put that thing in the truck that he bought it. We went on that weekend, and we took a Husky, we took a Honda, we took the Sand Spider just bought. We went out to Camp Rock Road out there in the desert and rode those bikes for the weekend. And when we were done, we're going, holy crap, this Maicos really and truly is the best. It was so much better than all those bikes that sold more popular, sold by a ton, won #1 plates. The Maicos was hands down the best bike, but little old Maicos couldn't compete. And on the motocross side, all those shocks broke, and that was the end of it for them.
Right. So when you talk to the motocross guys, that, you know, when they talk about the Maicos, they're like twin shocker. You know, the last years of the twin shockers were the best. And I mean, the motors, I mean, all those open motors, you know, when they got the Maicos were just really good. And I remember a lot of guys, but I haven't ridden one. It's like when I talk about Husabergs, Ray, I just want some kid that's a kid that somehow hears me say Husaberg, that's now high enough to stand and stare at this motor of a 5.7. He goes, why is that cylinder angled that way? I want him, when he's 45 years old, to go, I really need to ride one of those. I need to feel that kind of power.
I just had some industry people up here at my house a week ago, and I got my 570 in there, and they're kind of like, I heard about those, and, you know, what about those? And I said, you can't believe this bike until you ride it. If you've never ridden a Maicos, like you haven't, and I'm telling you how great they are, the 570 Husaberg is going to have the same laurel or reputation, because it's an unbelievable experience.
Yeah, you know what that bell's for, right? It's when we start gloating a little bit about it's the Husaberg 570 bell. Bob, our friend Mojave Bob, brought this in because he said I was going a little bit overboard on them, and I'm like, hey, that's all you need to know. So just shut up and continue on. So another interesting story. So back to Ray and I were sitting around at a motorcycle show one time, and we were looking at it. We were looking at Cove, I think, at the moment. Yeah. We were looking at one of the very first Coves.
With Andy and Tom looking at the Cove.
Yeah, so we're looking at a Cove. We're sitting there with some guys from a brand, maybe an Austrian brand. They go, that's just a knockoff of ours. And they were afraid to go up and look at it. And they're like, hey, Jimmy, you're a journalist. You go look at it. So I can go look at it. And because walked up, started peeking around. I said, it's not a KTM, because I have seen the factory KTM rally bike apart. It has the KTM shapes, I'll give you that. But I go, no, it's not a KTM. And we'd seen some pictures here and there, and it's like, I think because it has, the steel frame, but it's like a steel shaped Honda frame with a very Honda looking motor, and the suspension looks very much, so we were talking about this, but that's neither here nor there. It was one of the first times I'd ever seen one in person. So somehow Husaberg came up. I think I said, the best rally bike ever could have been the Husaberg because of the engine orientation. And like I said, I've seen the factory rally bikes, and all their air filters are exactly where Husaberg has always been. The real Husaberg has always been putting their air filters. They're up on the very front, right behind the headset, and kind of where Yamaha puts them now. So, by the way, Yamaha, big sponsor of this podcast. If you like what you're thinking and you're thinking about getting a new bike, think blue and go down to your Yamaha dealer and tell them Jimmy from Dirt Bike Test and Tech Talk Taco Tuesday sent you, and we'll be very happy for that. But anyways, back to the Husaberg. The engine design lends itself to having a straight down intake, that's high, mounted in the front, clean air up there. And we started talking about this, and I said, we were just pontificating about whatever, and I go, oh shoot, Ray, I know there's a guy in California selling 2 Husaberg 650s. Remember that time we rode the Husaberg 650?
Yeah.
So, and Ray at the time, I'll keep you going. So
the version, you got the version slightly not wrong. So we're talking about the Husabergs in general, and you said, did I ever ride the 650? And I said, yes, with you. We did a big test out there by Randsburg some years ago in your dirt rider days.
Right.
And we,
so back when Ray was working for Honda.
Yeah.
When Ray, you can't get in trouble now, right?
No. Yeah.
No, he was doing product research at the time. So Ray's working for Honda. He's out there supporting. So we at Dirt Rider, when I was at Dirt Rider, even though we had, quote, our 24-hour torture test, which turned into just straight torture test because nobody wanted to ride bikes for 24 hours, except for me and my stupid friends, we would go out and do. And I think we even did them. Did we do it at Cycle World Magazine or only at Dirt Rider? I don't know if we ever did one of these, but at Cycle World. But I know at Dirt Rider, I get a group of my buddies, and we would go out and legitimately ride bikes for 24 hours and just keep them running and try to get a lot of miles on them and see what happened to them. Because I was of the belief that if you take care of them properly, they're not going to break. If you make sure that it has oil in it, has gas and air filters clean, they're going to be fine. So we would do this. We would do it. We would go up and make a loop up in the mountains and do get 5 or 6 guys and go ride it. And so this particular one, we had a long-term Husaberg 650 that we were testing, and we just needed to put some time on it. And I think we did a Honda 450X at the same time. And then was there 2 or 3 bikes at that one? Do you remember?
Yeah, so for sure there's a Husaberg. I was there because of the X, and then there was one more bike. That was 2008 models. I'm just trying to think what was else out there.
Would it have been a KLX 450, or was it maybe a Yamaha 450 or
WR 2? Maybe.
Could it have been a Yamaha WR 250? Could have
been.
Yeah. So we got a big group of guys, and we set up a really nice loop out in the desert. And actually, that was a fun loop. That for a desert loop, that had a little bit of everything. That was super fun. And so we were riding, and I think Ray said, "Hey, can I take a lap on the Husaberg?"
Yeah. That
game over.
Yeah, the way I described that bike, especially when we were night riding it, is it was like every scene from Star Wars when they make the leap to light speed. You put that thing in like 4th gear and dial it on, and the world just went rushing by so smoothly and so fast. But it was like, that bike's got power. So,
oh yeah.
So we're referencing that ride, and we're having this conversation, and then at this motorcycle show, and the next day, Jimmy calls me up and goes, I just got contacted, or my phone just told me some guy selling 2 Husaberg 650. And I go, see, the phones listen to us. And the next thing you know, me and Jimmy both have used 650 Husabergs.
Well, I didn't make the deal completely with Ray yet, but I figured that I could go buy two of them and I could hang on to one of them. And yeah, so actually that was a complicated purchase. I ended up, getting it all sorted out, but like I had to go to Mexico, and there was a lot of a lot of logistics involved.
You were laying out
with
horse, and then met the guy at the Salton Sea, I think.
So no, he actually transported him over to Murrieta. He brought him.
Okay.
He had a place in Salton Sea where he stored him, and he brought him into Murrieta, and I picked him up there. I had to carry a lot of extra cash around in Mexico that I didn't want to carry, but it all worked out. Man, I still take my so I have a 2004 or 2003. I don't even know what year mine is. Mine's a Swedish built Husaberg 650, which I think you need to have a special permit to own because it makes so much power. Mine has the Delorto carburetor on it, and it just makes torque. But Ray talked me out of which year's a 2008.
2008. So it's the last of the vertical engine, and that was the Austrian built Husaberg. So
right. So it's
a lot of KTM parts on it, a Kian carburetor, things like that.
And the carb makes a huge difference in throttle response. It's still once you get it cracked and it starts pulling, they're the same, but yours revs, I would say, a good 1,000 RPMs more with that carburetor. Mine seems to kind of just not go, but mine also has the old ignition. Mine has the SEM ignition, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And yours has a
Kukasan or something.
Right. And so I think the ignition really helps out there, but yeah, what a couple of chariots. So anyways, we're living our, Ray has the Maicos history. I don't, but now he has the Husaberg, and that the 650, and still the 570 is a really, really good bike, but it does not make that pure torque that a 650 does. And the way I describe it is that when you're doing a hill climb on a 450 and you see guys climbing these big hills out in the desert and stuff where it's just loamy, and after a rain, and they're doing these hill climbs and stuff, and you just hear them like tapped, bouncing off the rev limiter because they can't shift. On a Husaberg 650, if you were up there and you were bouncing, well, they don't bounce off the rev limiter. They just kind of slow down and stop revving. If you shifted again, it would pull it, and maybe even one more. It's ridiculous. But they also blow up like ticking time bombs.
Yeah, it's that Mako lore or whatever. You couldn't not work on a Mako, and you need to tend to your Husaberg, or it'll maybe stop on you out in the boonies somewhere.
Right. And the 570, I think, is an incredibly reliable bike. I have 3 of them, so I should know. And they all run and they all work fine. They work fine until you need to work on them, because something like the wiring harness gets chafed, or the wiring harness has a problem, or maybe even in the odd instance that the wiring harness has a problem, you have to work on it, or maybe it doesn't have enough fuel and you have an auxiliary fuel tank on it, and the fuel line that goes right near the wiring harness has a problem. Then you have to work on it, and then all you do is curse. It's just nonstop effing Husaberg. Who effing designed this thing? This is
yeah. It's all layers of this hangs on that, and that hangs on that, and that hangs on that, and so to get to the loom, you got to start at the tail light to get to that part of the motorcycle.
Right. And there's a lot of I mean, you think about it, when you design that superior design, which, by the way, Yamaha uses. I don't know if you noticed this, but and the strange thing is that I don't know where Yamaha got that idea, but there was this company, they made bicycles back in the day, heard Cannondale.
Oh yeah.
Look at a Cannondale, and now look at the Husaberg. And and there's no such thing as an original idea. And whether Cannondale, I would give Cannondale more credit for the original ideas in that, which pretty much ended up bankrupting the bicycle company. But when they built that motorcycle, they said, "Hey, we're going to reinvent the wheel because this is better." They were on to some things. whether the timing was right or the implementation was right, that's for somebody else to decide.
The brave thing that Cannondale did was 10 new things at once. And it's so hard to do where, if you're kind of layering, you had your motorcycle, then you had fuel injection, then you had upside down forks, so you had one thing on the other. Cannondale just came out with 10 things at the same time, and they're new to the business, and just too many balls in the air at the same time.
Yeah. And to even roll this forward into what we've been sort of talking about, uh, with Ducati coming in and Triumph coming in, and you're seeing well-established street companies that are dabbling in the dirt market. You have companies like Stark and companies in previous like Alta that said, "Hey, we're going to get into this dirt market," which I I don't think I understand, or if I somehow was advising these companies on, hey, this is a great thing to do, I would say, man, it's a really expensive thing to break into and to be part of. What are you thinking? But then on the marketing side of stuff, I don't know that you're ever going to recover the cost in developing a 250 or 450 motocross bike on just based on sales alone. But if you do put it in front of the audiences in the racing world that bike gets to see, maybe that has something in name brand value. And then you think, where's this industry going to be in 5 or 10 years? And I think your wife, Lori, probably could have a little bit more insight in that. But are they just coming in for the exposure, or is it like BMW trying to make dirt bikes a few years ago, and they kind of said, oh, we want to compete with KTM, or we want to compete with whatever. I'm not sure I get it.
And since I was at Honda, it's certainly a big company. We had our corporate isms, and in my mind's eye at Triumph and at Ducati, I can see the meeting room with some young man who loves motocross or dirt bikes and saying, if we get in this business, we're going to get this much more sales, and we're also going to bring in these younger new people to our street bike line. And 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 I can go back as sort of a jaded old OE guy and say, yeah, that never works. But as somebody, one of my last gigs at Honda was in the professional race team, the sports department, where I did contracts and everything. Anyways, there's incredible value to go into a baseball stadium in January and have 60,000 people see your logo and see your bike banging around out there. And that's where the investment pays off, to go to spend that money. Well, to enter the dirt bike business, to start building it, but then to go racing, let's say at the US pro level, and have 17 times a year, 60,000 people see your motorcycle out there. When they say, gee, I'd like to get into bikes, some will get into dirt bikes, but many more will get into road bikes, and they choose your road bike, your Triumph road bike, and Ducati in the same space.
So you really think that they're actually doing it to sell the road bikes that they currently have, or are they looking at just building some name recognition with younger audiences? So in the future, and this is where I kind of say it, and I'll roll back to something else in a minute, where in the future everything's going to start going a little bit more electric, and there's going to be maybe some urban commuting, or more offerings from some of these companies. They say, hey, in 20 years, we want to be able to sell a full line of stuff. And if we talk to those kids now, where there's a Ducati or a Triumph out in Supercross, at least it's not, because when I grew up, a KTM, I didn't know what a KTM was almost until I signed a factory contract with the company. I mean, for me, it was Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki. I knew about these things called Huskies, but like KTMs, those, like, some old dudes rode them around. And
Yeah.
and
Well,
you think about, like, even Honda, what the hell was Honda racing in Baja for? And Bruce always told me it's to sell generators. Honda durability. Baja meant durability, and winning in Baja proved that you had a durable product that could last.
yeah, literally being in those meetings when somebody's going, "Why are you doing this, and how does it pay off?" You're at a company like Honda, where you really have a big net. You're your race winning supports car sales and generator sales and lawnmower sales and motorcycle sales and scooters and things like that, because they really throw a big net. You shrink down a little bit to, let's say, Triumph, to let's say Ducati. They're a little more tightly focused on motorsports or two wheelers in particular, but they're still trying. My opinion is they're trying to make that leap to a younger audience and more eyeballs. To there's only so much profit in a dirt bike, because if it's any good, you got to change it every 3 or 4 years, so your tooling keeps flipping. But the pricing is still only so much. Where you get into these larger ADV bikes and touring bikes, your price point's higher and your profits are better, and you get people on those machines. And to me, it's the only way it pays off for them. Um,
Yeah,
and Ducati, the same thing. And taking one step back, you got to remind yourself who owns Ducati. Okay, and everybody forgets it's Audi. Who owns Audi? Volkswagen. Who's the largest maker of automobiles in the world? Volkswagen. Plenty of money rattling around to go have a few experiments on the performance side of the business. So follow the money.
I've paid light attention to Ducati's entry into MotoGP, for instance, and they were there, they won world championships and stuff, and they just kept building and building and spent a lot of money. And I don't know how, like, you see how many motorcycles Ducati sells, and I don't know that equates to I don't think it's as hand in hand with the MotoGP budget versus how that works. You would have a much better impression of this, but then I go, okay, well, Italian company. Hey, what about Ferrari? You watch Ferrari in Formula One. It's kind of and I know there's a lot of sponsors that come into these certain things, and maybe it is a way where a team has enough sponsors that I know on the Honda side, you guys kind of struggled because you don't have a lot of signage. It needed to be a red motorcycle. And then your main focus as Honda running a factory team is to have a Honda out there winning, and you didn't want it to be an IBM motorcycle or a Red Bull motorcycle, for instance.
Right. It's interesting. I take a step back. You said, in your day, Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki, and I'm pretty much, they were the dominant guys. Even if I could, in my youth, there were Maicos and there were CZs and there were Huskies. They're already wounded, and it just took them into the 80s for most of them to die off, right? But right now, today, you look at what the Austrians are doing with their 3 brands, and the pressure they put on, let's say, the Japanese. And then if you talk about MotoGP, there's no Kawasaki team, there's no Suzuki team, and Honda and Yamaha are they're back markers. Aprilia and Ducati own it. They've pushed that Japanese industry, that industrial might and engineering expertise, and they've got them off to the sides. And that's a hell of an accomplishment to shove those guys into the backpack. It really, there's plenty of money and talent, but
when you go to Formula One, you look at the dominance of Red Bull, and a lot of that is in the back of a Honda motor.
Right.
So and Honda was kept trying to leave, and then they come back and they keep trying to leave. And so you see that the Japanese want to be at the front of, development on whether it's, engine technology, car technology. And that's where the racing has such a kind of a cool, that's what's cool about motorcycles and dirt bikes in particular, is that racing is such an important part, even to the casual adventure rider, casual dual sport guy. And maybe the casual dual sport guy has let's say a Yamaha XT250, which, by the way, Yamaha, nice sponsor of this show. They make this little bike called an XT250. Trevor really screwed us by not riding one in the Big Bear dual sport ride, because he got 9th. Even though it's not a race. Did you hear about this? This Trevor Hunter kid, he does dirtbiketest.com. Go there and check out our stories. Check out his video on doing the Big Bear Dual Sport ride, where somehow he got 9th overall. I don't know how you do that kind of stuff, but he was on a Yamaha XT, total top 5. So I don't know where I was going with that.
It sounds like you maybe haven't done it, and I didn't do it. But the Big Bear ride, they have
Oh,
a
I no, I've done it. I did it
the
on a Yamaha.
yeah
By the way, no,
the one down to Lucerne and
Ray,
back where almost
no,
nobody finishes. So
I did it on a Yamaha XT600, which was my first real dual sport bike. So that was my Lucky Logger Explorer because I had this fascination with Dakar. I've always had this fascination with Dakar. The minute I knew what it was, so I built what I call the Lucky Logger Explorer. I got myself in a Chirby's 6-gallon gas tank for that thing. It was just a bolt-on thing. Of course, the stickers, because gas went through the plastic, peeled off, and I drew a camel-esque logo that said Lucky Logger Explorer with a guy popping the top off of a Lucky Logger with his thumb. And that was my bike for the Big Bear Dual Sport ride, which I don't remember what place I got. I just remember them telling me I needed to get out of the parking lot because I'd never finish it. They say you're never going to finish. And I'm like, I'll be fine. They told me how hard it was or whatever. And I think when I got back in at the end of the day, they're like, you're back already? You didn't do the whole thing. But then they counted my little stubs because they used to put stubs in the thing or, checkpoint thing or whatever. And I'm like, it's like, you rode the whole thing? And I'm like, yeah, it wasn't that difficult. So that's what happens when you're a racer and you go ride a dual sport ride.
yeah, finishing that loop is an accomplishment, even with a more modern bike. So if he was essentially the ninth guy to finish on XT250, good for him and good for
No.
the,
He did it on a CRF 300 or a KLX 230.
oh.
Those are the bikes that him and this other kid, I can't remember his name. I don't know his name because I never see him on videos. He's not very popular on the internet. I guess he's a star on Instagram, but he's not like me. I mean, he doesn't have a YouTube channel and a podcast or any ISD gold medals or Dakar podiums for that matter or any other crap. But he's a thing on Instagram evidently. But he got 10th on a whatever. Him and Trevor were sharing, or they were testing the bikes is what they were doing. And I'll go back a step. That if you read all the comments on that video and you see how many guys are kind of impressed, and it goes to this, I always say it's the rider, not the bike kind of a thing. Because there's, in the video, you see guys that have spent probably 10 grand on their KTM, whatever it is, go blowing past them over the WL line or on the side of the road in the dirt in the 35-mile-an-hour zone. They're going blowing past them because, that's what they do. And then you get to the first technical section, and these guys are on bikes it's easy to get your feet on the ground. They make good chug power. They don't overheat because they got, they're designed to not do that kind of stuff, especially with chug power. The clutch isn't slipping. And they just putted right past them. It was kind of good. I don't like to say nice things about Trevor or his friend, by the way. Anyways,
Jimmy Lewis, the tough boss.
What are you going to impress me? I mean, I'm impressed all the time. I'm impressed I'm impressed by these kids all the time because they do really cool stuff but sometimes you have to kind of point them down a direction to say, hey, look, try that, give this a try, or you know what? When I was your age, I tried that and it didn't work out very well. And they go, oh yeah, what do you know? Okay, go ahead. As we talk about Maicos and you said Bultacos and I saw a picture on the internet today. We're gonna have to shift gears here in a second to the question answering phase of the show, but I saw a picture today of an Ogilvy jersey that someone had uncovered somehow on, I don't know, it was on Facebook or something. It was on like a District 37 history thing. And they, I'm trying to think of, it was from Dale's Cycles. And I'm thinking,
Dale's
hey,
Modern Cycle.
Yeah, that might have been Don, his dad, really?
No, it
was Bruce.
It like had a big wing on it or whatever. That's Dale's Modern Cycle over in Riverside. It was a Yamaha Harley Davidson dealer.
Huh.
And Bruce's claim to fame was him and Rutten and his other partner. We called it a Harley Ha. They took the Armachi 250 Harley engine, put it in a C&J frame, put on Yamaha forks, Yamaha wheels, Kernut shocks, Vesco tank, and that's when Bruce did all his early Baja racing. And everybody called it a Harley, and I'm like, well, there's no Harley anywhere near it, or in the sticker, But
Right. Yeah,
that was
because
his.
I
Those are the
know
early days.
that's how
The early days.
that's how they got started. Harley Davidson winning the 250 class in Baja, but him and his
Yeah.
dad used to race the
Oh, the
Hodaka.
hundreds. No,
Yeah.
the Baja 100 Harleys. There's
Okay.
a
Was it were they? What was the? Because we went out when I was at Cycle World, we had to go out to some place out in 29 Palms and pick up. I thought it was a Hodaka Super Rad or something like that, or I don't remember the bike. This is, like I said, this is before my time, and I would learn about this from doing some of these things I did at the magazine as the quote shop boy, where my first desk where I was writing stuff in the magazine, my first desk was in the shop on one of those little metal shop benches. They said, "Oh, we'll put your computer out here and you can sit out here." But my main job was to go pick up and deliver motorcycles and to make sure that everybody else's bikes were cleaned, prepped, oiled, all that stuff ready to go. So I didn't just start out as the esteemed motorcycle editor that I think I was.
somewhere.
So Harley 100.
So that was the same thing. It's Armachi motorcycle made in Italy. It didn't even have a down tube. It was one of those, sprung, and the engine. There's no down tube on the bike.
Hanger is a hanger.
Yeah, hanger. So it was quite the Hodakas and the Armachis were quite the in the early days. The T-bike class, the 100cc desert class, that was a thing. There's a poster. God, I wish I had one. Marcia Ogilvy's got one in her house. The Harley gang, they won all 1 through 10 of the 100cc class. Bruce Ogilvy, Don Ogilvy, Rossler, and 6 guys I can't remember. It's this great shot of all these bikes lined up 1 through 10, all on Baja 100s. District 37 won the whole thing in, like 70, 71, something like that, maybe 72. Somebody more expert on that would know everybody in that picture. It's a famous poster.
So how modified were those bikes? I mean, not modified to make them faster, but they were modified just so they would last through a hare and hound.
The one thing I remember, because it really started off as a little Italian street bike, the rear sprocket was something like a 62 rear sprocket because it had such tall gearing. But yeah, they had, fork kits, fork braces, Kernut shocks were just like the rule almost. At that time, I don't remember a bunch of them having like big plastic tanks. They seemed to ride around on the stock steel tank, puffed up seats, handlebars with crossbars in them. Ooh, imagine that, Mikuni carburetors instead of the Delardos or whatever. Almost all the modifications were just to go 100 miles and not fly apart, like you say, in an expansion chamber, a hooker header or something like that. This is pre-FMF. This is pre-Pro Circuit. This is pre-Bill's pipes,
Bassani. Yeah, pre-Bassani?
Right when Pisani's getting started. So it would have been JR pipes, Pisani pipes, hooker pipes. Honestly, back in those days, every region had a pipe guy. Bank was a guy in the Dallas area, and there was a guy called Tom Turner in the Long Beach area, and I'm sure there's guys back east that I never heard of, but there was a local pipe maker.
You sent your dimensions to Aircone, and they would send you cones. I know this because I made YSR 50 pipes. Yep. I had a YSR 50 pipe. You'd bolt it on, and it would go from I think stock was 62 miles an hour. It would go 70 miles an hour. And if you held it at 70, for much more than a minute and a half, it would seize. I knew this. I got out of the pipe business. Really quick when one of my buddies was going down the 405 and locked his YSR 50 up. So, yeah, the interesting. Okay, so here's what we got to do. We got to answer the Fasst Company flex handlebars question of the week. So this is a good one. It's from Todd Lofstrom. Todd's a longtime listener, and so he has a question for Tech Talk Tuesday. He says, "What does it mean when someone says they steer with the rear? Are they steering with their feet or the throttle?" Ryan Villapoto was the first person I heard say this. So do you want to try to chew on that one for a second, Ray?
Well, I'm gonna bounce back. So when we were towards the end of 79, 80, 81, right in that era, as you really couldn't motocross a Husky, and the Japanese were all over. So a Japanese bike, and we talk about like Suzuki's now, they turn on the front wheel and they bite the inside of the corner. Husqvarna, you spent all day long on the outside of the track because you turned it with the back wheel. Either you powered it, which was hard to do on a 250 Husky, or you slid it with the rear brake. The front end was so long and raked out, which is why they're great desert bikes. Turning the front handlebars didn't result in any direction change.
It generally meant the front end was going to push.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't go anywhere. So nowadays it's more like your road racing bikes are rear steers, and here's a little motocross story. When I was on the race team, Villapoto, I don't remember the model, but Villapoto ran this Dunlop rear tire. Only he rode it. No other pro guy was running it. Everybody said it stuck to nothing, and we would kept getting that tire from Dunlop. We go testing with it, and all the riders hated it. And then every week they got beat by Villapoto on this tire, and that was part of it, the rear steer. There was a certain amount of slide. I don't want to throw Dunlop on the bus and say a lack of grip, but the way that tire worked, there was some slip to it. And for Ryan, it worked. And it was part of the Kawasaki bike was good. Ryan had a lot of talent. He had this tire sorted out, and things just went his way. But that rear steer slip that he had.
Yeah. So just to be clear, so me personally, I'm a front end steering. I follow the front end, and so I like a bike that like tracks with the front end, has more weight on the front wheel, that doesn't that when I get on the gas hard, it doesn't want to step out. So there's a lot of characteristics that are built into different bikes. And Ray, you were around in 2009 when Dirt Rider, was I Dirt Rider at that time? Yes, I was. Yep. Dirt Rider magazine famously picked the Sierra 450R as the motocross bike of the year, which came under a lot of a lot of people were not super stoked on that, and a couple other magazines actually, I believe, picked it as their bike of the year, but then waffled on it pretty hard.
World liked it. Transworld liked it. The guys in Ventura, didn't. But that bike was a front steering motorcycle. Sure.
What did so MXA, they hated it.
Yes, they did not like it.
And
Adam Booth almost called me up crying the first time he rode it because it scared him so bad. So
yeah. So Dirt Bike was the other magazine at the time.
Yeah.
And when you go back to this and look at this kind of history of like this magazine tests and whatever, it was, for me, I liked it. I mean, personally, but I used a collective group of test riders, and we sort of all agreed. I don't want to say everybody agreed on the best bike, but we all agreed that the best bike for everybody was that. That was the direction that everybody was going at the time. There's no doubt that the CRs a couple of years previous were really good bikes and easy to ride, and they kind of had found their home. Kawasaki was still a year or two behind, like they always were. I always like to say this. Kawasaki doesn't really, the character of their bike doesn't really ever pioneer anything. KTM was kind of off in La La Land at the time. They were kind of doing their own thing, which evidently started working eventually. But you start talking about, so back to this front rear steering. That was a front steering bike, and that was sort of the direction everybody was going. But we're not all pro motocross riders, and we're not all riding at a super high level. And like you alluded to, a rear steering bike tends to be a lot more stable than a front steering bike. And so if you're kind of sending it, and I would say that Ryan Villapoto was one of the best riders that ever just was in a constant state of send. You know, he would just send it. Having a more stable bike is not a problem, but what the rear steer means is you're going around a turn and you either want to touch your rear brake or get on the throttle and have the bike pivot. And that's what causes the bike to pivot. Where someone that's doing something a little bit different, and you'll see that now when you watch guys like, well, everybody is riding a front steering motorcycle. And the way that they ride, especially Jet Lawrence, you know, especially the guy who kind of stands out is someone that follows his front wheel. And when you follow your front wheel, you can kind of keep more corner speed, because if you think about it, if you have to turn the throttle to get the bike to turn, well, you could have been going faster if you have that much traction. If you, for instance, if you're in the turn and you step on the rear brake, that slows you down. So it's not the fastest way in theory to go around a turn. And so you're watching, you know, these guys that are, they start their turn so early. You as a normal human are never, ever going to do that. And their bike setups are so particular and so tuned in for them. I think the issue is when you talk about it, like when it comes back down to it, the issue is that the manufacturer kind of has to have a bike that has the base that allows the race team to make the bike do that per the factory rules, you know, the production bike rules. I mean, they changed a lot of stuff even in that, you know, whether it's swing arm length and you know, headsets, moving headsets around, different triple clamps, engine mounts. You know, they're pivoting things around there as much as they can to make them do that. But those bikes, I've been lucky enough to ride a lot of different factory bikes over the years, a lot of them, and they were, frankly, most of them were horrible. For even at a higher level, I would say I ride a little bit higher level motocross than most average people. Even at a higher level, they were still pretty horrible. And other than some of the riders had really good motors. I mean, motors with really good, smooth, rideable power. And there's things you would want. You'd want the lightweight feeling of a factory 450. It's crazy, but you don't want to rebuild it every. How many hours would a factory 450 go, Ray?
Oh, every race.
Two races?
Every race the engine comes apart. You at least look at it. You know. So
right.
We might use the piston 1, 2, you know, but you know, re-ring it. You look at every part of it, put it all back together, you know, valves and stuff like that. I think we change them every race weekend.
Yeah.
Basically.
So there's certain things that, yeah, you would like that, but you don't want what comes along with that feeling characteristics. I remember when I rode the very first time I rode a factory 250F, and it may have been Andrew Short's bike, or no, was it Short's bike? It was I want to say it was a Honda factory 250F, and I'm literally idling the bike out to the track. I'm riding the bike out to the track and just kind of rolling it on, and I'm going, this is not a 250F. I mean, it felt like a 350. I mean, it had just so much torque and so much roll on, where 250Fs just didn't have this kind of torque and power.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that was something me and you worked on together. It was, and our friend Dave, who was building the motors, they're just all that power came at no reliability. 250 motors totally get cranks, piston rings, valves, springs, everything comes out at the end of every race weekend at that level of power.
Yeah,
it'd be so hard for the average guy to own, you know.
Yeah, I have parts that I think, you know, somehow we know how I have, you know, pro circuit cylinder heads of 250Fs, and you look at it's everything from the cam tower to the rocker arms. So it's like stuff you wouldn't even think of, but it's all these things in small things. They're just reducing weight, reducing rotating mass, reducing, you know, flex, reducing, you know, and it's nothing that you couldn't actually do, but how long is it going to last for at that point?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, well, so Todd, back to your rear steering. So rear steering is, like I said, it's kind of just, it's basically either pivoting the bike on the rear wheel or getting the rear wheel to slide to point where you want to go, as opposed to following the front wheel. And it's a rider preference, for sure. And it kind of just depends on, there's definitely bikes that stock would lean themselves to be better at that type of thing. But it's real easy to alter the setting of your bike to make it more that way, more or less that way. For instance, but yeah, I always like to go back to that 2009 CR because so many racers, like a lot of racers, hated it. Some really liked it, but that was the direction that was the bike that I think really the KTM was kind of already going down that path. In my opinion, they were kind of doing more front end steering sort of bikes, but they weren't that good as a complete package. But when Honda went that direction, it didn't take long for, I think in 2010, that's when Yamaha came out with their new chassis, that whole new thing, and that's the direction that went. And then Kawasaki stayed the course, and then Kawasaki had a good 2 to 3 to 4 years of winning shootouts, because when we get a group of riders together, and Kawasaki always knew how to make motors when it came to like 450s and actually all size motors. They always made good motors. They just kind of had this thing, this bike that sat right in the middle of all of them when we talk about the characteristics. And so when you're doing a shootout, you're hopping from bike to bike to bike and riding these different bikes. And even if you spent time on it, the Kawasaki always felt comfortable. And I would say, like, you always hop on a Honda when you sit on it. You don't have to ride it. You just sit on it and you feel where the levers and the handlebars and the foot pegs and the way the seat feels and the shape. Honda's always just had this at-home feeling. Sometimes when you rode them, they felt a little bit different. But, like, Kawasaki's, when you rode them, it was like, hey, they took all the bikes and threw it into a blender, and this is what came out. And so that was my kind of take on what was going on with the motocross bikes at the time, for sure.
Yeah,
it was a good time. It was a good time. I mean, my run there, it was a really good time because development was a big change from, to 2002 and 3, when the 4-strokes started coming and the 2-strokes started getting phased out, and they started trying to figure out these 2-strokes and the frames, and they're changing crazy stuff. And I think now they've kind of come to a very homogenized, there's a certain characteristic and feel that they're all kind of shooting for, and now we're just playing with stuff.
Yeah, the state of the art is sort of set at the moment. Front steer bikes, pretty stiff chassis, choose your material, and something we're all these buttons now on all the new bikes. We were working on that in my time with the race team because we could screw unbelievable amounts of horsepower into the engine, and of course they all loved it at the start, and then they couldn't hold on to the bike 5 minutes into the moto. So we started to have this, what if we had all the power on the planet at the start, and then you pushed a button, or the bike knew when you shifted it into third gear, and we'd tone the power down. And I think all the manufacturers now at the 450 level, delivering 68 plus horsepower isn't a problem, but you can't hold on to it. So how do you smooth it out? Or how do you give them controllable options,
they all come with maps now. Like a map is a thing that,
right,
that they need to have, and different kind of applications. By the way, Yamaha, awesome sponsor of the show. Hold on, I'm going to turn my Yamaha logo on just so you get to see it there. Look at that. Bing, Yamaha sponsors the awesome Power Tuner app. I have it right here on my phone. If I wanted to tune my YZ right now, I would do what I'm doing right here. I would go through here. I would get to my Yamaha Power Tuner app. I would turn it on, and I will call up my screen here so you can see this. It's real easy. You just go to the Power Tuner app. I'm going to pick my DBT WR450. I'm going to take my JL map version 4. Like, that's an awesome map. If anybody needs that, you can just email me and I can send it over to you and tell you why it may or may not be better for you. Because a lot of people say, hey, Jimmy, can you just send me a map? And I'm like, for what? Like, and this is where we go back to the people like, just give me the one that's better. For what? Because my map may not be the best map for you. And the maps the manufacturers put in the bikes May not be the best map for you, but with Yamaha, you can just push a button and go boop and send it to your motorcycle. And next thing and not only do you have one map, you can have 2 different maps in there that do that. And that way it's really easy to test back. And not to sound like a shill for Yamaha, because they do sponsor this podcast, but you can push the button on the fly. You don't have to come to a stop. You don't have to have it neutral. The RPM doesn't have. You just push the button and the map changes. Bingo, you got a new map. So if you do get that 68 horsepower map like Ray was talking about, and you do get the whole shot, and you want to go into cruise mode, you just push the button. You don't have to pull off the side of the track and let everybody pass you before you get back on the track. Does it sound like I'm complaining about something?
Oh, my marketing brain is going. You need to plug the SP.
How can you
Connect
shut this guy up?
You need to plug
Hey,
the SP Connect guys so you can mount the phone.
Oh, hold
right
on
the
a second.
bike and push the button.
Hold on a second.
See, there you go. Marketing.
This is the backside of my phone. It's got something on there. I would tell you what it is, but I forgot the name of the company.
SP
You know what I mean,
Connect.
Ray? SP Connect. Okay. Are you getting stuff? I have some of their products, and I do have some stuff. I'd like to talk to them about this. I have this new show that's launching pretty soon. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be tits. This show, I'm trying to establish my value to send out my what do they call it? Influencer partner agreement. I don't know, stuff like this. But if you want me to talk nice about your stuff, maybe like I do with Yamaha stuff, and all this stuff I'm saying is organic. I wouldn't make this crap up just to say it. Like you seen this book before, Ray?
Graveyard. What does it say? Graveyard.
It's coffee
Mist.
brewed with a graveyard mist. This is Jerry Bernardo's book.
Oh, Jerry.
I would read a passage out of it tonight. I definitely would, but I don't want you to have bad dreams. So if you want to think that your day, if you want to start your day with a little bit of, actually, I don't know if you should read it in the morning or the afternoon or before bedtime, but you should read it. So go get this on Amazon. Yeah, it's all, this whole show is just a bunch of sponsor reads. Are you getting advice, Ray?
Here? Okay. No, I'm getting my production assistant advising me of certain events.
Okay. Right on. Well, Okay. So you're all good. I
think some of our fans are actually watching on the podcast here. So.
Oh, you have fans. Well, it's good because
if I don't fans too, we have MIC executives apparently listening and chemical geniuses listening and stuff like that.
Oh, I saw the chemical genius. He's been on the show before. Chris Real, I'll give him a shout out. So DPS Technical, if you need to be advised on things like sound, if you need to be advised on things like chemicals, whether your bike is, if you want to talk to somebody who knows and is just real straight shooter, Chris Real with the DPS Technical. Yeah, so good to see Chris out there. I need to get him back on the show because I've encountered a couple new chemical questions that I need answers to. And Stack Smasher says, I wish Kawasaki would make another KDX model. Speaking of that, anybody see Carson Brown take on the Tennessee Knockout on the KDX 200? That was a good thing. I'm a big fan of Kawasaki KDXs. In fact, I got in trouble when I was racing for Kawasaki because they let me ride the KDX 200 at the District Enduros, which I would overall on a KDX 200. That was okay. But I desert raced it and won the 250 class, and they got mad at me for racing a 200 in the 250 class. And the reason I did it was because it had a 6-speed gearbox, and I could make it go faster than my KX250 at the time, which blows people away.
Got mad at you?
Yeah. James DeGain threatened to take my bikes away if I ever did that again. Because they were, I don't know why, but he did not want me racing a KDX 200. Maybe it's because I was humiliating all of his other riders that were on KX 250s that should have been beating me. Who knows? Back in the day.
So can you hang on?
Okay.
What can you see on that camera? Can you see this?
I see a KTM thing. You got some phone numbers, yeah.
So this is Dave Chase's KTM business card when he was billing some kid Jimmy Lewis's race bikes.
No, he was working for Danny Hamill.
No. You were first.
Maybe.
I would go.
They probably. Okay.
I would go visit the Glendale shop and then go see Dave for hot dogs, and he was building small KTM's engines for you.
Right. I think he only started working with me when I was doing 250s on my 125s.
Well, it's still not a big bike.
So, yeah, it wasn't a big bike. Yeah,
where I'm going with this is I had heard of you, famous racer, because of Jimmy and because of your, cycle news or whatever, but never met you. Then Dave had one of his rides out there in the desert where we all went together, and we were on the other side of the 14 or the 58 on some big sandy horrible uphill, and nobody was making it, and you came out of the woods from I don't know where on a KDX 200. That was the first time I saw you in person, and then some exchanges, some subtleties, and then you motored that thing right up the hill in front of 500 two-stroke XR 600s.
Okay,
all these trail riders, and you just killed them on the 200.
I remember this story. So it was one of Mojave Bob's little desert rides,
right?
And there's a lot of people there, and I think I helped because did we end up going up to my place?
In the end, you were literally helping people up that big sand hill. You used to be able to see
because I convinced them to put that in, and they said no, we can't do that. But the good thing was a road that goes around it. So when I would see somebody that was clearly outside of their skill set, I would say, hey, ride down and turn that road. You'll come out where this thing ends. Just do that. But I'll tell you what happened on that thing. So our good friend Kurt Heinz, whose kid races with Trevor Hunter. So Hayden Heinz and Trevor Hunter. So Kurt went motoring up that, probably on a KX 500 in these days, I would suspect, or it was a YZ 426. Who knows what he was? But I remember riding back down the hill, riding back down to him on the side of the hill, and stopping, and he was like stuck digging a hole, and he was with another friend of ours, Don Dudak. They were riding buddies at the time. They were both sort of stuck on the side of the hill. I remember pulling up next to him. And I'm like, oh, Kurt, looks like you're having a hard time. He's like, oh, yeah. And he's like, pushing his bike or whatever. And I knew that he didn't carry tools in his backpack. He carried beers in his backpack. So I was helping push him, but the whole time I wasn't actually pushing him. I was just unzipping the backpack and taking the beers out and throwing them off to the side for me. And I zipped his backpack up, and I kind of helped him get going and, got him up the hill. And he didn't realize until about probably 2 beers later that he was having a low tide situation, is what I like to call it. So
the Prospectors Motorcycle Club, a beer drinking club with a motorcycle problem.
Yeah. So I've helped him. He was obviously getting stuck because he had too much weight, and so I took some weight out of his backpack and got him going. And so yeah, I do remember that. So that's where you met me. On the side of a hill.
That's the first time I saw you in person.
Out in the Mojave Desert. Saw me in person.
Mojave Desert.
Boy, I probably wasn't doing my reputation any good at that point. Because this was before I raced with Johnny and for Bruce.
Yeah, this is the pre Johnny stuff.
Early days, and yeah, because after that I went on to because we really got to know each other probably a lot better when we did the Nevada Rally, correct?
Yes, yeah. Because then that's when I helped Johnny at that time. Well, Lori was racing the race. I was pitting her, but all pre to that, I would go do my dealer visits. Then I'd come back by Torrance, and when we built all those magazine bikes, I'd help Johnny with like simple stuff. But I'd prep all the bikes, or do all the air filters, something like that, because we had to build 10 or 12 bikes for everybody that year.
Oh, that was the journalist Nevada Rally year.
Right. And then the next year was the XR 400s. So I built all the XR 400s, and Johnny built all the 628s. And that was the year all you guys won every class at the Nevada Rally, 95.
So you, at that time, you were running the service shop at
I was
Torrance.
I was still a field rep. So I would just go see a Honda dealer somewhere in Southern California, come back to Honda every afternoon and work on these bikes getting ready for the rally. Like a volunteer almost, you know what I mean? So
right. Yeah.
You had a 400 and Lori had a 400, and then Bruce was going to ride a 400, but he wound up on the EXP2, and then that Richard Sankt guy who's passed away, he wound up on a 400. So we had three pre-production 400s, and everybody else is on 628s. And then everybody won their classes. I got the ad right over here on the wall.
I have that. No, I have the Baja Win ad that Cycle World put. I don't know if I have the year we did the rally stuff, but that's like one of the things I go back and you could say I wish I didn't do that. Like the year that that Honda invited all the journalists, and I was just a journalist at this time. I was just a little lowly editor, off-road editor. I think my desk had moved from inside the shop to inside the building. I moved into the building. Somebody left, and I got an office inside the building now. I remember I got the opportunity, Honda presented the opportunity to Cycle World Magazine to have one of their editors ride the Nevada Rally. And since I'd done it the year before on a KLX 650, which I blew up every single day, I mean, almost every day I blew that bike up. I think I finished one day. But since I'd done it before as a story, I was lucky because they gave me redemption and allowed me to go do it again. But they did, I kid you not, that offer came in to David Edwards at the magazine, and they did consider having another editor go take that, quote, factory ride for a journalist, if you can believe that. I'm sure you can. That would have been God, how so okay, so I got that ride. I got to go and I got to be part of Bruce's training program, which was really cool to see how Bruce Ogilvy worked and the way his mind thought. And it's one of those things even to this day that I knew it, but this is what reinforced it, is like, you're not going to be good at something unless you truly practice it the right way. And so he made us, and I do this with my rally students now, he made us go make our own road books. So there was 5 or 6 of us, or 7. I don't remember how many. So who was on the team at the time? It was Johnny, for sure. Johnny Campbell.
Well, Johnny and Davide Trolli were like we'll call them the pro riders.
Okay, so Davide Trolli, who's an Italian guy. David from Hesperia, we like to call him. There was Tom Webb.
Yeah, so you editor guys was you and Tom Webb.
Paul Clipper. Jeff Kapp.
Clipper. Yeah, Cap was on the pro side, you can say it that way.
He was on the pro side, yep.
Yep.
Who else? Because
we're forgetting somebody. Did John? No, not Tom. Did John?
Oh, might have been Chris Johnham.
I think Johnham rode for Cycle News.
Cycle News, yeah. And who would have been for? Oh, Tom Webb was dirt rider at the time. Ron Lawson. No, Ron Lawson was a KTM 540. No. Yeah. Ron Lawson rode.
No, Tom rode, but I think it was dirt bike by then again.
Yeah, I don't remember. But anyway, so none of the other...
We were just talking about the Crippa deal, but anyways.
Yeah, so none of the other journalists rode or did the training. I don't know if they were invited. I'm not really sure. I didn't know at the time, but I got invited to do that mostly because I think Bruce knew that I was into this rally thing, wanted to do it, had raced it the year before on my own, through Cycle World. But he made us go out, and we each had to come back with a 150-mile long rally in our area wherever we chose. We had to make a map book and make copies of it and bring it out. And every Saturday morning we'd go out and do. One day we do Johnny's rally, and then Bruce made one, and Jeff Kapp made one. We all made our own rally and would go practice these things. And that really helped. I mean, I'd already made my own dual sport rides, which were at that time. And when we were practicing on the skinny paper, like dual sport side thing, because they didn't have the bikes built up and whatever. So it was a little bit different, but that was the technology. There's no GPS at the time, no cell phones or anything like this. You just go out and mechanical odometer, and go ride rallies. But that was a bitchin' opportunity. But back to what I screwed up on is I won the first day by like 8 minutes in the Nevada rally. I had practiced, and I didn't just practice with Johnny and Bruce. I went out and did some of my own stuff, and because I knew I wanted to go rally racing somehow or another, I wanted to get to Dakar, and so I'd ridden Peter Hansel's bike the year before, and there was some things in the works, but like as an American, it's almost impossible. And so I went out and did that. Won the first day by 8 minutes, and then managed to get a little bit turned around the next day, and got ahead of myself and crashed. I threw away a freaking 8-minute lead in a rally, which is, if you have an 8-minute lead, you just follow the guy that's in second place. That's all you do. But nobody told me that.
You got to learn those things.
I learned. I never managed to get an 8-minute lead in a rally. Well, I didn't. No, actually, I didn't in Dubai. I won because other people made really stupid mistakes, kind of like I did that year in Nevada Rally. So, but yeah, good times. Man, what an opportunity that was. So you were and my mechanic, Red Austin.
Yeah, Red.
Old Red. Yeah, and he would always be stoked when I came in, except for the one day on the 400 when I cartwheeled it. He wasn't happy that day because he liked to go to bed early.
Yeah. Lori finished one day where she'd stuck her head right through the road book, and that was a long night for us. So we all went through at least one night.
Yeah, I left my road book. I don't know if I left it out in the desert. It was just dangling on the front fender the day I did mine. It was like, oh, geez. So yeah, good time. Old Nevada Rally. I mean, that what was cool about that is just that the fact that we had the opportunity. I mean, for me, that was such a huge opportunity. And now you have to go to Mexico if you want to do, a rally that you're going to get any sort of recognition or do something for. But yeah, come and do Nora. I'm going to make a really good course, and you may have heard it here. You may have heard it here that we are going to limit entries this year. So just if you're paying attention, that's the bonus if you're a Nora racer and paying attention to this podcast. So Tomcat says his dad, his old man, rode his 450 RL to the track today or Sunday with luggage rack still installed. Did he do laps? That's the thing. I want pictures. I said send some pictures. Yeah. The track pictures come out tomorrow. So he did ride around the track. That's good. Oh, boy. 450 RL, not the best on a motocross track, but you could do it. Yeah, he put down 2 15-minute motos. Awesome. How old is your old man? That's what I want to know. Yeah, send the photos in. We used to have this segment called Roosterendo, and by the way, I'm going to bring all this stuff back. Like Tech Talk Taco Tuesday is going through sort of we'll call it a lull. He's 55. That means he's a year younger than me. Well, that guy should be hammering out 45s, 2 45-minute motos. I'll tell you what, on a motocross track, Tom, that bike will do 45-minute moto, no problem. So tell your old man to get his shit in gear, and that's awesome. But I would never do that. I wouldn't recommend that one bit. So, any other questions we have here on the thing? Ray, do you got any other good stories to tell? Like, so should I should probably make this public now. So should my ashes be run through my Husaberg at like full to half noise at the location that I tell somebody to ride that bike to? We're thinking about our trusts and our wheels now.
Yeah. Well, what I told you, I guess, is it's not going to hurt the bike, and you're going to get your last fling right through the combustion cycle. So
it's
an interesting idea.
If that seats the piston rings just that little bit better, like imagine that thing will have more power, which is hard to believe, but that thing can have more power because I'm in it. Yeah, that's the way to go out. So if you don't know what we're talking about like maybe our last wishes are to have our ashes go through our favorite motorcycle, full sing. You just take the air filter off. It'd be so you could do it while you're riding on the Husaberg because the air filter's right in front of you.
That's right.
Because your bike's bike's an Elsinore, right? Is yours an Elsinore?
Yeah. I got my 73 green striper.
Okay. Remember, you're not going to be around when I do this to your bike.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope. Unless we start
No, no,
chopping
no.
parts of our bodies off beforehand to make
No, no,
this
no,
sort of
no.
happen. So
We'll
this
wait
is
till the
this
natural end.
yeah, so this is how this episode even got started tonight, or even why we're doing this episode, because I was joking around with Ray and Lori earlier, and we were talking about some you know, advanced life issues. And I don't know where I came up with this horrible idea that now is a thing. Heather, thank God you didn't call into the show. We'll talk about this tomorrow. We'll get it put into the paperwork.
Yeah, exactly.
Chris Real says he'll brew the fuel.
There you go.
Hey,
Race gas.
I'll tell you what, Chris. If the fuel is drinkable by a human at the event, that would be even better. Like you could drink some of the same fuel that's going into the engine that is now expelling me out the exhaust where I need to go. There's no such thing as a bad idea on Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, my friends. So with that, I think I was going to go through some of the. We had a pretty good run tonight. You wondered what we were going to talk about, didn't you?
Yes. Didn't know where this was going to go.
When
We went everywhere.
Well, yeah, we needed to go everywhere with that. I had a couple of things I was going to bring up on some of the. I saw some photos. Someone, let me see if I can go back to the search I just did. It was so a couple of the groups that we used to actually publish on was EXC and FE Performance page, and there was a good question about, or information about. I'll get to it. Where the heck was? Oh, I'll tell you something that I did the other day. So, there's the one I want to see. I was out riding my KTM 500. I think it's a 2021 the other day, and I had just recently, and I have a video about it. My fuel filter inside the tank finally cracked, and I know that this happens to everybody every single time. Anytime you have a KTM, your fuel filter always breaks. Like, it's strange that these bikes even run, but. Just saying that's a bunch of crap, by the way. This bike probably has 350 hours on it, and the fuel filter cracked. So I went in and I put in a Takamoto metal fuel filter inside of it. I had one in stock. I just threw it in there. When I did it, I drained most of the gas out. Of course, since I was riding different bikes, I took the gas that I drained out and poured it in another bike. So when I put this thing back together, I only poured a little bit of gas in there, and so it was way down at the bottom. So we're going to go riding. I know I've done a really good job working on my bike. I mean, I'm really meticulous. I hardly ever get distracted. I'm not trying to shoot videos about things that I'm doing when I'm riding the bike, and I don't just stop and take a break to pet my cat or tell everybody how awesome I am when I'm working my bike, but that may not have happened. So I got my bike. We're going to go do a 250-mile desert ride down to the gas station, fill it up, take off. We get to the other side of the dry lake bed going up this road, and we stop to check to make sure that everything is okay. And I notice my gas level is a little bit lower than I expected it to be, and I look off to the side, and there's gas leaking down along the fuel line, and it's like a slow drip. I'm like, oh boy. It ran fine, even on the dry lake bed. I held it wide open. And it got going plenty fast. It wasn't, I'm like, oh, where is this coming from? And it was even a little bit was spilling out of the gas cap because it was full and it might have been splashing. So I could see where it's spitting around there. So I'm like, what's wrong? So I look at it and I go, okay, is it the gas cap? And I shake the bike. I tighten the gas cap down all the way, shaked it. Okay, it's not there because it could have been leaking from there and going forward and running down the frame tube and coming out. Is it the fuel line? So I kind of like look, and I know to check to make sure. I always check to make sure it clicks when I put it in there, but I'm checking down there. I'm kind of pushing the starter to feel pressure. And another thing that I did on a bike recently, we talked about it on episode, whatever the episode is, did a couple weeks ago, about how you can push it and you can feel it pump up the hose. And if you can squeeze that hose back down, the fuel pressure goes back down. You've got a leak someplace, like in the fuel filter, like my bike had, but I fixed that. no, the pressure didn't go down, but it's still leaking. What's going on? Well, on the older KTMs, you have where the plug goes in, and you have all the fuel lines that come out of the plug, and then the down along the lines, that's where the fuel pump sits in the lower part of the tank. So mine was actually leaking out of the upper part. So when I filled up the tank, it rose up to the place where the wires and the hoses kind of come in, where the pressure sensing, I believe the pressure sensing part is up there. It was leaking out of that. So the upper part. And I was like, okay, well, we've got to go back. I've got plenty of gas to get back. So you'll like this, Ray. But I think I can fix it. Don't know how, but I thought maybe, okay, I'm just going to torque the bolts down to make sure they were torqued properly. Maybe I left that little second part a little loose and it wasn't flat. And you think about it, there's 4 bolts that go into this thing. It's got a custom kind of O-ring shape around it, and that's where it interfaces with the tank. It was leaking out of there. So I thought maybe tightening it would work. Nope. I took the seat off, reached in there with the Torx bit, tried to tighten. They were all good. Now it's still leaking. Okay, tank comes off. Let's take the tank off. So luckily we took the tank off, set it down, and when I turned it down, that was the highest point in the tank, so I was able to pull that piece out and look at the O-ring. And it was not pretty. It was kind of dry. And then I also noticed that it was a aftermarket fuel pump assembly, which, like, how do I, now I'm thinking, like, okay, what's the problem? How'd it go there? If it was stock, would I have been having these problems? I go to pull the O-ring out. I get a little screwdriver and pop the O-ring out, and you can see where it's cracking. So the O-ring lost its, we'll call it its elasticity or its integrity. So the O-ring wasn't pushing up against the tank. So that's why it was leaking. So what do? You're out in the trail. I'm asking you this question, Ray. You got to give me the answer. So you're sitting there, you see this, and this O-ring, by the way, if you pop it off, you would have to stretch it out a big amount to get it to come off of the backside of that square plastic piece. Because it's smaller than that. And when I started stretching it, that's when I really saw it was cracked. So you're out in the field, you want to keep riding, you don't want to ride the 12 miles back to go find an O-ring, which I have around here someplace. What do you do?
My first thought is, do you have a hunk of electrical wire? Because the soft insulation could work as an O-ring. And then my second idea, they're kind of rare anymore, is if you had like a shoelace, you could use that as like almost like a gasket. Those are my first 2 ideas.
Interesting. Very good ideas. Yeah. So here's what I did.
What was Jimmy's idea?
Jimmy's idea was, so I looked in my pack, let's see what I had. I had duct tape and I had wire. And so just like you're thinking, like the electrical wire or something like this, I'm thinking all I have to do is put some pressure behind the back of this O-ring to get it to be proud, to get it to seat out, and then I can tighten it back down. So I was thinking about wrapping a piece of wire the same diameter as that O-ring and then putting some duct tape around it to essentially do exactly what you just said. But I kind of thought about it more, and I'm like, I'm just going to take a strip of duct tape and fold it up on itself, kind of roll it into a little bit of a ball and just stuff it into the crack. And I did. Yeah. And guess what?
Duct tape O-ring. Good idea.
It's not the duct tape so it goes tank, O-ring, duct tape, fuel pump housing. So the duct tape is inside of the, behind the, so because it can't get out, it's kind of it, but it pushed that O-ring proud and seated it up, and I was able to continue on my 250-mile ride. And I didn't lose another, as Chris Reel would call it, unplanned hydrocarbon release. I had no unplanned hydrocarbon releases on the rest of that ride. So that's called Jimmy rigging, by the way. And here's the problem. Here's the really big problem with that. I'm going to forget that I did that, and I'm going to keep riding it. And then I probably should put a note on it, but when I came back, I was like kind of thinking about something else. And I probably should go put a note on that bike right now, but I forget everything I say in this podcast, so I won't actually do that. Because in a year and a half or 2 years, when I pull that thing out, I'm like, oh, who the F did this? What kind of hack mechanic? Or I'll sell the bike to somebody, and they'll come back and they're like, you'll never believe, like, did you do this? And I'll like go, yeah.
Hey, of the many DCC sayings, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary repair.
I forgot about that one. Yeah, so back to holding up Dave's card when he was prepping my bikes and stuff like that. This is where Dave and I learned a lot about each other. Dave really liked it, especially when I'd come down to his shop with my young girlfriends at the time and hang out. That was really good time. That was good times for Dave. That's why we really got along. But he really didn't like it when I would take the new KTM box. It was a box, and it was really small, but it had a whole motorcycle in it. And I would cut it open. I would put the front wheel on. I would put the foot pegs on it, and I put the handlebars on it, and I would load it in my truck and leave. And if Dave got a box like that, Dave would open the box and take the entire bike apart, entire motor part, and spread it out on the floor and reassemble it like a proper factory mechanic. The problem is I could take that bike that I threw in my truck, ride it for a couple of weeks, show up at the District Enduro, overhaul the thing, 2 or 3 times, and then we'd show up at a National Hare and Hound where I would get to ride the quote factory bike that David spent all this time on, but we had to run. Oh, I shouldn't tell this story while Chris is here.
Yeah, you're in a box now.
Yeah, so I had to run this
you
oil.
had to run a corporate sponsor.
I had to run a corporate sponsor, and that oil was good for 99.9% of the time, but that 1/100th of a percent of the time when I have to hold it wide open on a bomb run and just send her, it didn't work. And guess what I have to do? I have to unload that stupid bike out of my truck, my practice bike, my enduro bike out of my truck, slap my National Hare and Hound numbers on it, and go race that sucker. And Dave would be so pissed off because it wasn't a properly prepped bike for the thing. So there was my temporary fix to
Right.
Yeah. So anyways, on that note, Ray, hey, thanks for joining and telling us Maicos stories and Husky stories. And what was your best ever finish in Baja?
Well, Dave, when I raced with Dave, he was the class champ, rider of record. So we're the 250 champ. But my best finish with him was second place in the 250 class. So
Yep. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I remember Dave used to tell us about the old Baja stories, and I remember when I was a kid just not paying attention to them because, like, yeah, really, Dave was a bigger guy, you know what I mean? He'd put on a few extra pounds, and you're thinking, this guy was a racer, and he wasn't that much older than me. It was a crazy thing, at the time. But he liked working on him more than he liked training. Double chili cheeseburgers.
That's right. We in the '83 Baja 1000. We were first 250, fourth vehicle on the course, and I was on the bike and it blew to shreds on the Diablo Dry Lake. And actually, Lori and Murray drove out there with a whole nother engine. We did a motor swap, kept going. The Pfeiffer brothers were on the Yamaha going like stink, but they hadn't figured out how to run a light on a Yamaha or a Japanese 2-stroke. So when darkness came, me and Dave didn't give up. We just kept going. And we might have won that day, but because darkness came and we had a light and a moped motor, and we just finished the race and got the championship that year. But that's back into the slow and reliable time.
Yeah, and hence you chasing around those dealerships, so there's always a Husky influence.
Exactly. I was at the Honda Husky dealer in those days. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, good times. Thanks for jumping on and doing the show. I'm sure we got to get your buddy Bones to come on.
Yeah.
I got to unearth some Husky CR125 stories from the starting line of the CMC Transcal with this like giant that was next to me. We talked about this a little bit. He'd be awesome to have come on the show because he's afraid I'm going to ask him about like inside suspension secrets and like he knows all that, and like
His
that.
his
I don't.
his
I want to talk about
his
fishing.
grandnephew and grandniece were just up here the other day because they're going to college here at the Embry Riddle, and we were talking about the biggest guy I ever saw on a 125 Husqvarna. So,
So awesome. Okay, Ray. Well, with that, we're gonna sign you off. I'm
sign off.
gonna
Okay.
start finishing up the show, but we appreciate you coming out. And for anybody, Ray was a longtime motorcycle, we'll call him industry guy. Has been so for those that are watching, Ray, I met him when he was at Honda, but had a long history with Honda before that, and kind of when I was a journalist, he was one of my main go-to guys. I could bounce ideas off him. Always helped me come up with really good story ideas. Made things easy, which is kind of what a media representative from a manufacturer used to do. Now they try to make things hard. They try to not give you bikes and not have you do anything because then it's less work for them. But so there's where we're at these days. Thank you guys all for joining in and watching. This show is not possible without the help of course, Yamaha and a lot of other sponsors. Again, pick up Jerry's book if you need that. There's at least 2 more available on Amazon. I'm positive about that, and you might even get a sticker. The guy from Connecticut or New Hampshire or something sent me some Fuck You Racing chapter stickers the other day, and I'm very appreciative of that. Somebody asked where the George sticker was. This is the George sticker. If you're missing out on that, George doesn't listen to this show anymore. He's been banned. And of course, our original sponsor, Delaney Drive Components. So go get, if you need a sprocket, a drive wheel, pick up a DDC chain wheel. And with that, we will see you out on the trail. This is the end of the show. Cheers.
If you liked what you saw in this video, come check us out over at dirtbiketest.com on the webs. We have bike tests, product tests, a lot of fresh dirt, and you can even support us by clicking through our links. Hopefully, we'll see you out in the trail.